joined now by Alexey Muraviev from Perth, Australia. He is an Associate Professor of National Security and Strategic Studies at Curtin University. Thank you for joining us, Professor. So, in addition to more than 100,000 troops on Ukraine's eastern border, Russia has now begun moving troops to Ukraine's northern neighbour, Belarus, for military exercises. Is this just a show of force, or is Moscow building up towards an invasion?
Look, I mean, let's put things in the perspective. If you want a sort of an expert opinion, it's important to realize that yes, 100,000 troops sounds like a lot, but we need to remember that according to open sources, the Ukrainian military amassed about half of its standing force, which is around 125,000 troops in the country's eastern regions. And any battlefield calculation would suggest that going into battle with an aim to exercise strategic offensive when you have a parity with your enemy is not going to guarantee you military success. So for Russia to exercise full-scale invasion of Ukraine would require about 3 or 4 times the size of the force it currently has on its borders. But what it does, it actually adds pressure on Ukraine. It deters Ukraine from exercising force against the separatists in the country's eastern regions, and obviously provides the Kremlin with additional leverage, additional bargaining chip in their strategic negotiations with Washington and Brussels about strategic stability in Europe. So it is a show of force. It's also a show of deterrence against the Ukrainian military, because obviously up until 2014, Russia did not fortify its border with Ukraine. So partially, these troops are there to effectively fortify this boundary, which is now has become like a permanently hostile nation to Russia. And yes, the force would have the capacity to exercise limited incursions into Ukraine, but if we're speculating about full-scale invasion, it still haven't reached the level that would be sufficient for Russia to achieve success.
Yes, and now we have a situation unfolding in Sweden. We mentioned there that Russian forces were becoming increasingly active in the Baltic Sea, so much so that Swedish troops are now on the island of Gotland in that sea. Is Sweden under threat here from Russian troops?
Well, the Swedish always had preoccupation and concerns about Soviet, later on Russia's operational activities in the Baltic Sea. I mean, historically, Sweden had pretty problematic relations with Russia, starting from the times of Peter the Great, the so-called Northern War, to which Swedes lost to the Russian Empire. And obviously, in recent years, the Russians increased their operational activity, the size of their deployments, the scale of their deployments in the Baltic Sea region, particularly around Kaliningrad exclave, Russia's most western post. And obviously, there are concerns that the force that the Russians managed to mass in Kaliningrad region would allow that to effectively exercise offense against its immediate neighbors. Maybe not so much against Poland, even though even the Poles kind of worked out a number of war scenarios under which Russia would defeat the country within 20 days. But certainly when it comes to much weaker neighbors like the Baltic states, the Russians won't have any problems in invading and securing those territories. And obviously Swedes feel pressured by Russia's presence being in the neighborhood, and also by the fact that Sweden has been overtly opposing Russia's political actions, Russia's latest trends in its foreign strategy towards Europe. Sweden has been supportive of Ukraine, so the Swedes obviously have legitimate concerns about their own security, even though the Russians are likely to do anything hostile towards Sweden, because that would only elevate the chances for Sweden as well as Finland, the only two remaining Scandinavian countries that continue to retain a neutral status to join NATO. So the Russians would not be interested in having NATO proliferating even further in the Baltic Sea region and effectively establishing full control over Scandinavia. But on the other hand, it's an open secret that Russia and Sweden are not on very good political military terms.
Okay, Alexey Muraviev from Curtin University. We'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining us on the NewsHour.